This is a Sex Pot Comedy production.
A while back, Dick Barry and I agreed that what really matters is what you like, not what you are like. Books, records, films, these things matter. Call me shallow. It's the fucking truth.
Welcome to These Things Matter,
the podcast where we talk about pop culture autobiographically.
I'm Kevin O'Brien.
And I'm Taylor Gonda.
And today, we're talking about virgins and people who are desperately trying to lose their virginity.
Aw, baby-faced virgins.
Crossing 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah, I mean, if it's the sure thing, then...
You gotta go for it.
You gotta go.
Yeah. I mean, you could just go out to a party and be polite to somebody.
But you're in college. You don't know that. You don't know that.
I mean, I didn't have to go that far.
Well,
I'll just
Kev,
put it that
you're
way.
a sexual... your prowess knows no bounds.
My prowess knows... Oh, I wish you would have told me that when I was in college my freshman year. Yeah, I didn't travel across country for a sure thing. However... I definitely traveled across a dorm hallway or two.
Well, we'll get into it, but let's introduce our guest.
Our guest today, who's joining us all the way across the internet. You might know him from WPRB Radio. It's Jon Solomon. How you doing, man?
Hey, everybody.
Thanks to you.
How's it going?
Yeah.
How are things in Colorado tonight?
Oh, they're wonderful.
They're really good, and I feel like such a genius. We figured all this technical shit out in like a half an hour, John.
Oh, no one needs to know the hurdles we leapt over and obstacles
I
we
think
had
Taylor
to jump
wants
around.
them to know.
Yeah, they don't need to, but I mean, it was a feat.
Well, we're talking now. It's happening.
It's happening.
See, we didn't have to hitchhike across the country. We didn't have to get on a bus. We didn't have to.
Didn't have to.
And
use
yet
our
we
dad's
still had
credit
an
card.
adventure.
Didn't
Yes.
have to catch a ride with grad students from an unnamed northeastern college.
Who just happens to be Tim Robbins.
Yeah, and Lisa Jane Persky.
Exactly. Yeah.
great.
I saw her in the movie. I was like, and I tweeted at her, and I said, "Oh my God, you were so funny!" And she's the best. And she said, "Thank you so much."
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, John, why? So, I got to admit, we love Cusack on the show, obviously. But nobody's done a John Cusack episode because I don't think we've allowed it yet. But then you came in the side door and you're like, no, let's talk about one Cusack movie, which I loved because then it's like, oh, we'll just be able to do more John Cusack episodes down the road.
When Taylor asked me if I wanted to be on, which I was very, very flattered, the first thing that I thought of immediately, just because I've loved it since grade school, was Doctor Who, and someone beat me to that.
Yeah.
And then
FOT.
I thought maybe we could talk about Christmas music, because I do this Christmas marathon every year on WPRB, but then I realized I didn't necessarily want to be known as the Christmas guy for the rest of my life. And then I have a daughter, she's 7, and we've gone deep into Star Wars, and I was like, oh, I'm sure someone's done Star Wars by now, which I checked and they haven't. And then I was thinking about things that were important to me when I was impressionable, and unexpectedly the next thing that came to mind was The Sure Thing.
Man,
I love
quite
how
a journey you went on.
Yeah, I love how bold you went, like super big. You're like, I'm going to go TV show, imported TV show that spans many generations, or I'm going to go the biggest pop culture thing in America with Star Wars. And you're like, no, we'll just do one Cusack movie instead.
But just rewatching it, I was somewhat alarmed to realize how much both then and now that movie shaped my worldview.
Man, you're on the right show, that's for sure.
It came out in March of 1985, so I guess when I saw it, I was 11. And I saw it not knowing anything about it. My mom and I went to a theater in downtown Philadelphia, and my mom and I both then and even recently would go to a lot of movies together, and I just remember both of us loving it and it becoming the sort of thing that all 4 members of the Solomon family would quote, and just going through it, watching it again recently, just being amazed how much of the dialogue and there's a lot of mannerisms that the protagonist had, and being 11 and being sort of terrified of both high school and college, and when I reached both those points, I think for better or for worse, the Sure Thing influenced some of my decision making.
Well, so you went and saw that movie with your mom. You didn't have a moment, like, because it's all about sex. and you're
It is,
you're
but
like
you know, but it's a super sweet movie though. Like it's
Yeah.
about sex, but but ultimately it's not really. And if you think about like movies that were around of a similar style, like, you know, you had your Porky's and your Last
Caddyshack.
American Virgin and stuff like that. And those are just like super oversexed dudes and
Way more raunchy, yes.
yeah, like exactly, way more raunchy. And this movie is much more like a companion piece to It Happened One Night or something like that.
Yeah.
Where
I could see that.
you
Yeah,
know,
totally.
I guess the thing that was always, and this was sort of the least relatable part of the movie to me, is at the beginning when he and Anthony Edwards' character are just finishing high school and they're at this party and John Cusack's Walter Gibson is talking about all of his sexual exploits in high school. That was easily the least relatable part of the movie to me. And I think being 11 and then being like, wow, that's going to happen. That's very, very soon. And
Well,
that's going to happen as much as he's talking about.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen.
Unfortunately, as an 11-year-old, you probably don't quite pick up on the fact that it's all a bold-faced lie.
Oh yeah. See, I had that same situation as you, John, except it was with Porky's, but it was like late at night on cable, like by myself, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is what lies ahead of me." Me and my friends, we're gonna. But then that's not, like Porky's is cartoonish for sure thing. Like you're right, it's very like classic Hollywood. Like it's a road movie, it's like a romance movie, and I think not having any nudity helps a lot to
It
not
does
make
help.
that situation between you and your
Sure.
mom
I mean,
awkward.
there's a bare male backside stuck out of a car window, but I guess
big one.
really that's about it. Well, what year do you know offhand, what year did Trading Places come out? Is that
80
a couple years later? Is that
Yeah, I
like
think-
86?
Yeah, 86, I believe. Is when, yeah,
Because I know that was the first R-rated movie that I saw, and I remember I saw that with my folks and my friend Scott, and just being amazed at, I can't believe these things are in a movie.
That actually came out in 1983.
Oh, I should have known. Jamie Lee Curtis's boobs were in top form in 1983.
They, I will politely not disagree. but
it's only polite of you to not disagree.
but I know I didn't see it at in the theater. I know that I would have seen it, and I think universities still do this. I grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and Princeton University is here, and so they would show a lot of second run stuff, like one day only or a couple days. And so I know I saw Trading Places in like a science lab, with a big pull down screen, and that left a different sort of impression. But I don't think I'd seen something that explicit's the wrong word,
Sure.
but something that changed me in different ways.
You came of
by
age.
the time I'd seen The Sure Thing.
Yeah, and it left a bigger impression on that desk when you were watching Trading Places as well, right? Come on.
I think is some innuendo here. Maybe,
Yeah,
John?
I
don't
gotta go for it. It was on the tee.
know. Kevin's the Anthony Edwards of this podcast.
You know what? Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I rewatched it last night. And John, you're totally right about all the heart in it too. And Sure Thing is sort of like second tier, like mid second tier Cusack for me as well. That like I was way more into Say Anything. And
Yeah.
See, Say Anything never resonated with me, but it is his first leading role, and that and Better Off Dead come out in the same year.
Yeah. Mhm.
And both of those are movies, and I'm certainly not alone in that regard, where, you know, as you're becoming a teenager or as you are a teenager and you're a guy growing up in central New Jersey, you know, John Cusack becomes that vessel of sorts where you can...
He's the vessel for the 80s. Like, if you've got
But
Better Off Dead, One Crazy Summer, and The Sure Thing,
Yeah.
let alone Say Anything, which is sort of later on, but even those three,
A lot of home runs.
it's like, okay, yeah, that's the guy that we want in our movies.
You root for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to be it's what's the old cliche? The guys like him and the girls want to be with them. That kind of thing.
Guys wanna be-
or
Yeah,
guys
and it
want to be
turns
like
out
him.
that
That's
I-
right.
And he was only 16 when Sure Thing was made, and apparently, according to the extras on the DVD I watched, they were not going to cast him because he was underage.
He was just too good.
And so Anthony Edwards, for a while, was going to play Gibson, and I think that would have been a totally different movie if you have him as Gib and Daphne Zuniga or whomever as Allison.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to point out to the listeners, if you can hear some smooth jazz in the background, that's on purpose. That's not in your head.
Yeah. That's on purpose.
Yeah, John.
No, they're really getting into it in the other room.
Yeah, John's at a college
I don't know
studio.
if they know what to make of me here talking on my computer.
I gotta be honest.
in one of WPRB's studios.
I don't find it as distracting as I thought it would. I'm
enough.
kind of digging it. It's a
But
nice
secondly,
little...
I can't believe he was only 16.
Well, you got to keep in mind that these movies that we're talking about, all these characters are 19, 18, 19
No, I
years
know,
old.
but
So
usually-
Cusack was 19 for like 5 years.
I realize that, but usually when a character is playing a high school student, like just got out of high school,
Yeah.
they're like 25.
Well, Say
playing
Anything came out in 1989, though. You got to he played the same age character more. He actually played a younger character at the end of the decade than he did in the middle of the decade when he was in Sure Thing.
I believe that his co-star Daphne Zuniga was 23.
Really?
Around 23, and then her boyfriend that she's going to
40.
see in Southern California was 32.
He looks so
He
old.
looks like the oldest 32 you've ever seen
It's
in
like,
your life.
are you a teacher at this college and you're living in the dorms? I don't understand. It's like,
But I mean, he's a good example of the fact that, and I think watching it with several decades in the rear view, it's a superbly cast film.
oh yeah, definitely. Well,
Like it's a very economical movie, and everything has a purpose to carrying the narrative, but there aren't a lot of superfluous friends. It's just, and everyone they encounter on the way. When I was rewatching it, I really took note of the fact that they did a good job finding someone for the truck driver, or the guys that he runs into at the bar, or even the
oh my God,
the
those guys
professor
at
at
the
this
bar are insane.
unnamed Northeastern college.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
those guys at the bar. Where who wrote that scene? Somebody else wrote that
yeah,
scene.
they probably wrote it on the spot.
Well, it seems like it's in a different movie, but I don't care because it's so funny.
Yeah. Well, that's Rob Reiner's touch in that movie, and like we're talking about Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer. Those, like, while Cusack is very similar in all three of those movies, those two movies are totally so different from The Sure Thing, because The Sure Thing's got such a Rob Reiner mid '80s, like, top of his form Rob Reiner quality of even the small roles are given to the funniest or best or most important people. Like even in Spinal Tap, you think of all the, like, Fran Drescher almost got cut out of it, and like he's got such a fingerprint on the movie now that I didn't even realize at a younger age.
Sure Thing was the second movie that he directed after Spinal Tap.
Man.
So he directed Spinal Tap, then he directed The Sure Thing, and I had never noticed it until I just watched it recently, but there's a This Is Spinal Tap poster on the dorm room wall.
Excellent.
In Gibbs' dorm.
Of course he has that poster. He's that guy. He is. Well, see, now I would imagine you, John, being from the East yourself, would very much relate to Mr. John Cusack's character and say, well, this is me. This is who I'm going to be. This is exactly who I want to be.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And also just, even though apparently they filmed most of the college stuff at the University of Pacific in Southern California, the school they are going to looks very much like the Tony College that I grew up near. And also, I mean, I guess they filmed some of the exteriors at Cornell, but even though the school's never named, I just always assumed that they were driving from Dartmouth in New Hampshire all the way to Los Angeles.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and Taylor, you're saying earlier, I was like Anthony Edwards. When I was watching this movie, it reminded me so much of me in college. But I felt so much more connected to the character of Gibb. Like, it was truer to my life in college than any other. Like, I spent most of my adolescence being like, oh, I'm like Lloyd Dobler, Like, I'm going to be that Cusack. And then I was like, oh, my God, in reality, I was like Gibb with a little bit of Anthony Edwards' character, because I was a dude who, like, moved away from the town that I grew up in. I was like getting all drunk and calling my friends like, "You gotta come, man." And I was like, but I was crying because I was so emotional. I was like, "I'm having so much fun. I miss you. You gotta come out here." But then I was total like Gibb in the way that just like like I also woke up 7 minutes before my 8 a.m. English class for my final, and like was really kind of screwing off.
Did you swallow the mouthwash like he does?
No, but I did stuff like pretty close to that for sure. Like I put toothpaste or not toothpaste. I put hand soap in my mouth one time to get like the stink of my breath like out of my. Yeah, it's gross. It's gross times.
With a moment like that, and there are a bunch of other moments like it in the film when he and Allison are at the motel and he teaches her how to shotgun a beer. There's a bunch of moments in the film that now, to me, I don't think I realized this when I was 11 or a teenager, seem very clearly improvised.
Oh yeah.
But in a way where, I think Rob Reiner had the good sense to kind of let the actors on screen figure out the dialogue, and so like they talk to they almost break the fourth wall in a way where they're saying, "Oh, kids, don't do this at home," and they're looking not directly at the camera.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Off into the middle distance. And even with the swallowing the mouthwash, that was a moment where I wondered, is that in the script, or is that just something that John Cusack decided to do because it's something that he felt that his character would do?
Well, the way he talks about how to shotgun a beer is very Cusackian.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly
it's
what I was
very
thinking.
detailed description in the way that.
And I can't remember. Sorry to interrupt. I can't remember if I had already gone I don't think I had at 11, possibly 12, gone like full punk rock straight edge. But I definitely remember trying to figure out how to similarly shotgun a can of Coca-Cola with disastrous effects.
Well, it's not the same. Does not go down as easy, I don't think. Well, that is, the thing that you're talking about, Taylor, is there's like the Cusack essence that is full force in the Sure Thing.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that you like. The reason that I loved High Fidelity so much when I was a young man, the reason I loved Say Anything so much when I was a young man, or the things that he perfected in those movies. But you get the first taste of it in Sure Thing, and I think you're right about the improvisation. But more than that, it's those eyes. He brings the Cusack eyes and the real sort of like the casual earnestness, but also enthusiasm that he has when he's walking back and forth when she's doing her laps, and then he falls into the pool. Things like that. Where that's 2 minutes of him just going and going and going like full Cusack.
That particular scene.
Yeah, there's no editing.
Yeah, I imagine that particular scene has been used in drama classes as monologues.
Oh, of
course.
If I was a drama teacher,
Yeah.
if you want to take the John Cusack,
and I'm saying drama and not theater because I'm talking about high
schoolers,
yeah.
of course. I want to teach that class.
And and that is such a this is my first movie thing to do.
And it's the same
the
thing.
Second movie I've directed, first movie I've been in. Maybe it's the first movie they wrote. I don't know. It's all very like, this is exactly the thing I want to write. It's a long monologue. And It's so clever. It's so interesting. And it's like, well, you could have accomplished that in like 5 minutes, but
it's better. I don't know. I prefer it the way that it is because of the Cusackness of it, or the Cusackianness, however you say that, because the thing that he's doing in that scene is the same thing he's doing like 15 plus years later in High Fidelity. Well, but except now he's talking into camera like Woody Allen or something in High Fidelity, but it's the same sort of, he's still there, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the thing that I love about John Cusack is that it's always the continuation of the guy that you fell in love with the first time. Like you get it, like you see the connections.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say
yeah.
I'll pause and then start my thought up. I lived in Chicago for 9 years, and towards the end of the time that I lived in Chicago was when High Fidelity was filmed.
Oh, what?
And I found that movie very, very distracting because almost every extra or background character is someone who was also involved in music in Chicago at the same time.
Sure.
So I spent a lot of time just looking at the sides of the frame and then pointing at the screen and going, I know that guy. So I almost think of it less as High Fidelity and more as, I know that guy.
Yeah.
That's why the movie's so great, because every time you watch it, there's like another little detail. You're like, oh yeah, oh wait, there's a Damned record behind his right shoulder, or in your case, oh that was a dude that I knew way back in the day.
Hey, it's the guy from U.S. Maple.
I mean, I think that what I found amazing, because I had never seen it before, John, so watching it for the first time, like he is so unabashed, he doesn't care if he looks like an idiot. In fact, he's partially trying to look like an idiot.
Oh, he looks crazy in some scenes.
Yeah, like and that's true in his later work, but I think he's the most like willing to make himself look like a fool
It's
in
definitely the
this movie.
zaniest I think you'll ever see Cusack.
Well, I mean, the other two, Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer, are more zany movies.
but he's not zany in them.
Right,
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Like even High Fidelity.
Well, how
is
can
like
you compete with
Freakouts
Bobcat
and
and
Oh, yeah.
Booger?
well, and also I think when you like we were talking about like his transition into the Savage Steve Holland movies and stuff, that he it seemed like he didn't need to be the cartoon or surrounded by a bunch of other cartoon characters, so he could lean way more on the more young Cary Grant side of him, or whatever the hell that he became of the 80s. Like the sweet doughy eyes of John Cusack were more vital to those later movies than him being the off the walls unhinged guy or whatever.
Yeah, but boy, it's charming.
Of course.
I found watching it, I mean, it's been a couple years since I saw it, but not that many, probably 4 or 5. And I used to, it was one of those movies kind of like Tootsie, where anytime I would see that it was on TV, then I would have to watch it until the end. And I found myself appreciating, maybe because I'm more, theoretically grown up than I was the last time I saw it. I found myself appreciating Allison more than I did when I was 11 or in my 20s. She was far more fetching on this most recent viewing than I think she had ever been. To me.
I would have thought if you were like, if this was this defining movie for you, that it would have been like, oh yeah, Allison's the girl for me. Like as a
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciate a woman wearing a blue puffy vest.
We do in Colorado as well.
I'm sure in some way it led to a lifetime of pining after unattainable women and finding myself in relationships with people out of state. But I don't tie it directly to Daphne Zuniga. Like now Diane Franklin in Better Off Dead. That's a whole different conversation.
Because she's foreign, is that why? So
and she plays the saxophone, right?
The French women, man. I'll tell you what. Oof, I went through a phase. My early 20s.
She's also in Last American Virgin, which, have either of you ever seen that movie?
No.
I don't know if I have.
And I'm going to spoil the end of Last American Virgin. Is that okay?
Oh, go ahead.
I feel like that it might be in the title, but go ahead.
I think it's enough. I think enough time's passed.
No. So this is spoiling it without spoiling too much, but the first 95% of that movie is just the worst, like sub Porky's schlock. And then the last 5 minutes of the movie is the most unexpected, sad gut punch.
All right.
And seeing it in the middle of the night, this was probably when I was in my 20s, because I remember my girlfriend at the time ended up getting me like a theatrical Last American Virgin poster somehow, which I still have framed in my closet.
Dude,
but
that's probably worth hundreds of dollars at this point. Who still has the Last American Virgin movie poster?
It is rough. like I mean, I can go into, this isn't the Last American Virgin episode of your podcast, but just it's a total unexpected, like, it does not end the way teen sex comedies of the 80s traditionally end. And I remember one of the first times I saw it, it destroyed me.
Well, I mean, that's French, though, because it's like you got the Jerry Lewis end of things.
Yeah.
And then you got like the Truffaut or something end of things, or I don't know. You know your French directors more than me.
Sure, it's more Godard.
Godard,
Wait, does a kid die at the end? Does that happen at Last American Virgin?
No. Let me try and I'm going to try and remember this. So, the protagonist is in love with this girl. His like sort of Sean William Scott-esque friend ends up getting her pregnant, and then wants nothing to do with her being pregnant. And so the like nice guy protagonist is the one that takes care of her and maybe even takes her to an abortion clinic.
That's exact. That was going to be my first guess instead of kid dying. I totally had
and then at the end he's going to go see her. And like he has flowers for her, and it's like, oh, he spent all these weeks helping her and taking care of her, And then he comes into some room at a party, and she and the guy that he was friends with are kissing, and he just looks very sad. And I believe they don't even see him. And so the last shot is him just like driving away in his car, and then the credits just start rolling up.
That is the most.
So
that's the most accurate portrayal of teenage years, I think.
Yeah,
I've not lived that exactly. I did not take a woman to get an abortion and then see her go back with a guy. But oh man, that is so fucking heartbreaking.
But to juxtapose that with like, like it's the classic 80s sex comedy trio of relatable nice guy, slightly more handsome guy, and the guy who you can cut this part out. I can't think of the name of the actor. He was in Animal House, sort of the larger guy in Animal House.
John Belushi?
No. Stephen Furst.
Oh, Flounder, the fat guy.
So you have the traditional trio of like the nice guy that you relate to, and the slightly more handsome guy who's a little bit of a creep, and then sort of the Stephen Furst-esque overweight comic relief.
The guy who,
and like in the first part of that movie, like the flounder-ish guy is like running around trying to have sex with a Charo knockoff. So to go from that to then just this rough sledding is something else. But maybe I can steer things back to the sure thing.
That's okay. I mean, all right, let's see if we can find the way back here. I was going to say I related to Allison a lot. Of course I did, right? Of course I did.
Well, how could you not?
Right, but there's something...
When I was watching that movie last night, the whole time I was like, oh my God, this is like if Taylor and I were the same age and we went to the same college, except hated each other.
Yeah.
It was like...
We wouldn't end up together in the end.
Oh, yeah, no way. No way. We wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. You would have left me at the bus station in the second act.
There's something about her that I understand, which is the sort of doing what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Just very sort of guarded, sort of, I'm very, her teacher, who is so perfect, by the way, with the accent.
Even the way she speaks is so spot on.
But just all of that, and yet there's something like she's passively going along with John Cusack. She's passively like, I'm saying no, but actually, hey, I stayed at the bus station. Oh, and you can sleep in the bed now, and just sort of hinting
because she feels bad enough for him.
I don't think that she feels bad. I think she likes him, but she doesn't. She's not willing to admit it to herself.
Oh, okay. Well, there's it. Yeah.
I would be curious to know more about her character's backstory, because are they the same year at this unnamed Northeastern college?
I get,
because she seems to have far more life experience, having gone away with her UCLA boyfriend, and like she seems like she has. Perhaps in high school, she led more of a life, or maybe she's a couple years ahead of him in school.
Well, they're in the same class.
I wasn't quite clear about that.
Yeah, she seems very achiever kid. That's what I always took from it. Like, I assumed they were probably both around the same age. Maybe she's a year older or something. But she was a kid who was already an adult when she was 12 or something. Like I said, Gibb was exactly like me when I was 19. Just like shotgunning beers in the morning, eating Little Debbie cakes. Playing football in the quad instead of writing the paper, just trying to be like, oh, it'll work it out, having no money.
It was a little alarming to realize how much I dressed like John Cusack in The Sure Thing.
I really love his fashion sense in Sure Thing.
I still kind of in a 2015 way still do.
Oh yeah.
Like it made me sort of worried about like, am I a man child? Am I just a kid standing on another kid's shoulders wearing a trench coat?
No, I think
it made me question things in a way that I probably wasn't prepared for. One afternoon.
I get that.
Well, it's a guy who looks as though, at first glance, he doesn't care what he wears. Like, he looks like that.
But
then
sort
it's like
works
it's
for
really
him.
put together. Yeah. In a way that's kind of
you know what it is?
Sloppy, but it's good.
Layers.
It is
all
layers.
about layers, man.
It is layers.
Yeah.
But that's
all right, I'm going to ask each of you a question that I hadn't thought about while watching the movie, but I'd be curious to get each of your opinions.
Okay.
Gibb and Allison still together?
No, come on.
I don't know, man.
Have you seen Hot Tub Time Machine? That's what happens to him. They end up breaking up.
When I was in college, I thought not a similar situation.
You didn't have a Gib.
I had a gentleman that I was like, this is it, this is forever.
But was he
no,
like
it's
Gib,
just
though?
college. It's
Yeah.
just college.
Sure.
You know, they both have stuff they got to work out
I think
in their lives.
I think they're gonna have a really fun 3 to 7 months at the very most.
Months.
Yeah.
I think it lasts through college, and then maybe it's all over.
No, I said they're gonna have a really fun.
Oh, I see.
3 to 7 months, and then they're gonna stay together for like another 6 to 9, and then when it comes graduation, they'll either break up or one of them will be too codependent, and then probably move across the country with each other.
So bare minimum, they make it to the end of that academic year.
Oh
I
yeah,
think so.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because you got to think because it was around Christmas time. And by the way, what university has exams after Christmas? Like what sort
You know
of
what?
semesters are they on?
Believe it or not, Princeton does.
Oh, really? So it's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
so like
that.
it's. I mean, I didn't go to school here, but just interacting with the students that are here now, they go on this long winter break, and then there's kind of the specter looming behind them that when they get back, then they're going to have reading period and exams.
That's the worst.
And I would imagine that it makes break no fun whatsoever.
Oh, of course. That's awful. Why would you do that to that kid or anybody?
Man.
You're just messing with their minds. Well, all right. Yeah, but so they are.
Do you think they're still together, John?
I don't know. I'm going to go with together through most of college. Yeah. This might just be me putting my own.
That's all we're doing. Yeah.
I put my own
the characters.
backstory into
okay,
it.
so they're together through most of college, and then probably they go their separate ways, and then maybe reconnect a decade down the line, and you never know.
You never know.
What a
Who knows
hopeless
what happens?
romantic! You're always leaving the door open for her.
Yeah, I mean this I think I always was. But this movie kind of, I think movies wronged me in a way. I don't want to get too deep here, but
agree,
I think
man.
like movies set up unreasonable and unachievable expectations.
Oh yeah. Well, and I wouldn't say unreasonable expectations, but it's a hard thing for everybody else around you to have to
deal with.
Yeah, exactly. To deal with your idea of what existence is supposed to be.
How it's going to go.
Yeah, kind of. Or
Yeah, I mean, and I watched a lot of movies.
oh,
when
I'm right
was,
there with you, man.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, sometimes I'd go through 4 or 5 VHS tapes on a weekend, maybe more, and I think watching a lot of movies like The Sure Thing, once not that long thereafter, where hey, there are girls around and I'm interested in them and they're interested in me. And just, I think I expected things a certain way based on movies that was not at all rooted in reality, but I had nothing to compare it to.
See, that's why you got your mid-20s to pull yourself out of it. And you're like, oh, everybody else has just been living their lives. I've been too busy like trying to become John Cusack in my own life,
Sure.
There's a reason why you love the movies, and it's not because it's exactly like your own life.
But you want it to be.
Exactly. So just appreciate it in that way instead of like desperately trying to shoehorn
But I think
that sensibility into your own.
Yeah, but I think John's got a point, which is that you have a very limited understanding of reality.
Oh, yeah.
Or just how the world works at a certain age. And so
Totally.
if movies are like, this is how it works.
Yeah.
You're like, well, shit, that's how it works. God damn it. Why is it working that way for me?
Yeah, and if you love these Cusack movies, they usually end on a pretty awesome high note as
Sure.
well. So it's like, oh man, like I should have been watching Last American Virgin because that was more accurate to my actual teenage years. So then I would have would have been too real, maybe. I don't know.
When I was in high school, I still cringe thinking about like there was a very, very beautiful woman at my high school, and I made some sort of grand romantic gesture. And we were very, if it was a caste system in high school,
Of course.
we were not on the same level. And it was just, that works in movies. And just in 1988 or whatever, it does not work.
Well,
and I still to this day kind of I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm talking about it now on a podcast, but I'm like, oh, hope people have forgotten about that.
No, but it stays with you. It stays with you. The feeling stays with
Yeah.
you. The humiliation stays with you.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that doesn't go
The
away.
sense memory is always there. Well, John, is there a song to take a break here that takes you to that place where you can remember being? Is the sense memory so strong with a certain song from Sure Thing?
Well, the two songs that I definitely, well, they're three songs that stood out when watching the movie.
Okay.
One is, if I could change anything about the film, I would use a different song than the Ray Charles song at the very end. But I actually thought the use of both the Cars song that they play and the Jay Giles Band song that they play, you know, it stood up pretty well 30 years down the line. So why don't you pick one of those?
They had a significant budget for the soundtrack, it seems like.
Well, and Rob Reiner really took a lot of appreciation for how his soundtracks influence his movies as well. Like Stand By Me is like 60% soundtrack, honestly. Like the way that it's the amount of time it takes up on screen and the way that it adds to the time period and the feeling and everything. It's great.
Well, I choose Jay Giles Band because that's my thing right now.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just feeling it right now.
All right.
These days.
Weird, but okay.
I don't know. This just where I'm at.
No, I mean weird that I would never guess that you'd be into it.
Fair enough.
Jay Giles Band is totally like, your ex-stepdad's beer drinking jams.
Maybe that's where I'm at in my life right now.
Well, you and I are gonna,
Wine drinking jams.
Let's go hang out in the garage and listen to this real quick. Then. That was Peter Wolf with Lights Out.
Yeah, not the J. Giles Band, but that's all right.
I'm embarrassed that I thought that was the Jay Giles Band. I apologize, listeners.
I was thinking of the James Gang, actually.
Yeah.
I realized later. So we're all wrong here. We're all wrong.
Well, and Taylor, during the break, I gave it a little credit. I was like, that kind of sounds a little Jay Gilesy with the guitar. You know, it's got that very mid '80s perfect sound. Like that. If I didn't know that song was in a soundtrack, I would just assume that it was involved in a montage somehow.
I saw Rob Reiner talking about the Sure Thing, where he said that he feels the music of it is fairly timeless, with the Rod Stewart song at the beginning and the Ray Charles at the end. And I have to say, even, you know, like the 80s cuts that are in it are not, you know, terribly egregiously of the time. I thought the music actually stood up pretty well for a film that's 30 years old.
Sure. Well, it's
not like if the movie was made, you know, 3 years ago and it would have been like, all the college kids are listening to Witch House now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me, like we were talking about Dirty Dancing on the show a few weeks ago, about how Rob Reiner was able to sort of blend the timelessness of the 60s or whatever with a little bit of that 80s sound to create this weird...
There's a 60s sound?
Well, like the way that in the soundtrack throughout Sure Thing, like you're talking about Ray Charles and stuff like that, and like blending that with like this 80s thing that it creates, like it's not timeless, but it's not gaudy or anything like that. He buffs out the 80s-ness with some like period stuff, you know.
I
Dirty
suppose
Dancing
so.
is not good, right?
Oh man, well yeah, we'll refer you to the episode of that one.
We may have to disagree there, John.
I kind of loved it, to be honest. with
Okay,
you.
fair enough.
But I
think I just remember. I think that did that movie come out in like 87 or so?
88, 89.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, I think by that point I was, you know, fully deep in the throes of punk rock, and so lots of people that I grew up with were super into it. And that was just another thing for me to push back against. Maybe I would enjoy it more.
Oh yeah,
who knows?
It sounds like we have very similar backgrounds. I'm telling you, give it another go around.
Yeah.
You said you liked Last American Virgin. If you love movies that have abortion involved,
I was going to say,
Dirty Dancing is right up your
I don't
alley.
think that's a Netflix category.
Not yet.
Well, I mean, it really is like a stellar, hit kind of soundtrack, because Dance Hall Days is on there.
Sure.
And the Heart of Rock and Roll, a Huey Lewis song, and what else is on there?
Huey Lewis, another perfect like mid '80s quintessential
Yeah.
sound, right there. Jay Giles Band and everything.
Yeah,
else.
the Cars song you're talking about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there is that Rod Stewart song, that
Yeah.
Infatuation song. Which
But you know that works just fine
It
with
does.
Nicolette Sheridan at the beginning. I have no qualms with that.
That's the one thing that is a pretty date. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of dated about the movie, but definitely Rod Stewart, the Nicolette Sheridan walking around in that bikini and everything.
she is so 80s.
Yes, exactly.
She is like her hair, just the particular bathing suit.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. Do you guys think she's attractive in that? Is that is that your
I'm
As
No,
young men?
I don't think then when it came out I was into her, and yeah, even now it is not my thing.
Do you know what I really like? I like her when she's actually at the party. I
She
like her
seems
when
very
she's like
nice,
a
right?
person.
Yeah.
And I'm mad that they're treating her so poorly.
Right?
And I'm like, she seems really nice. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Jesus.
Yeah, she does. And I mean, obviously she's attractive, but I've always been more of the boof in this scenario, or the Betty of the Veronica. You know what I mean? Like I usually go for the Daphne Zuniga. Actually, Daphne Zuniga, it was like way the only brunette. Like, I guess I gotta settle for the one that's really well rounded and interesting. Route. The only person more attractive than Daphne Zuniga in the '80s of that trope, I think, has to be Demi Moore in One Crazy Summer. Like, the fact that Demi Moore is like the real down to earth, hanging out with the guys one in that movie is like, you're a fucking model, man. Like,
Yeah.
if that's what you got to settle for, Gib or Hoops or whatever the fuck your name is in each movie, things are going all right. Yeah, the girl next door that he is having trouble getting together with,
Right.
is
You could
in
have a
love
conversation with.
is in love with her, and not only that, she's fucking French and better off dead. You know,
Yeah.
like it's
If
a
only
bounty
she
of
would
riches
take
for
off her
Cusack.
glasses and stop studying so much.
Yeah, exactly. Let your hair down. Take off the glasses. Then we'll know you're hot.
That's you guys. That's why I say anything is the best
Because it's both in one,
it's
right?
her from day one. He gets it from day one.
Yeah.
He gets it.
Yeah.
He's not a dummy.
But and I was just thinking that, but I think that Ione Skye might be the weakest of the Cusack
Yeah.
affection of the 80s. I mean,
I think she may be the most accurately
yeah,
like she's very shy as an actor, it seems like, which
Mm-hmm.
works for the character.
yeah, definitely. That's her charm. But as I get older and we're going back watching the rompier ones, it's like I got Ione Skye ranks pretty low right now on my Cusack brunettes. You know, 'cause
Yeah, I never connected with Say Anything, and it's the sort of thing where now talking about it tonight, I almost feel like I should go and revisit it immediately and see
absolutely.
if I feel differently.
I think it's definitely like there's a continuation of the sure thing there. With
yes.
like a here's this person a few years down the road, even though technically that
He's the
person's
same
younger.
age, yeah. But he is more matured.
Yes.
The Cusack is a little more refined and aged. It's been down in the cellar for a few years and still is the same age.
Right, and then that same character gets really, really jaded and turns into Gross Point Blank.
Yeah, exactly.
And then maybe he comes out of the jadedness in High Fidelity.
Maybe. Well, he's still embracing it, but yeah.
He's just fighting against the adulthood.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
John, I would say if you enjoy like the hotel room moments in The Sure Thing, you're gonna love Say Anything. Like the heart of The Sure Thing is worn on its sleeve big time in Say Anything, where it's like it's not balanced out by a lot of goofiness or wackiness. If anything, like the jokes in Say Anything are more like we were saying around John Cusack, like with his crew and like Jeremy Piven or whatever the fuck, like kind of like in One Crazy Summer, really.
I know this is switching gears slightly, but just since it's almost the entirety of my second sheet of paper here, I was
sheets.
Whoa.
This
That's
DJ
right.
has 2 sheets.
2 sheets of paper.
Two
And a
sheets
pen.
of paper and a microphone.
But just it is not The Sure Thing is not a super quotable movie, with a couple exceptions, but just there are so many small moments in it that I still remember using that I
How do you
found
mean
that kind of baffling.
Like in your day to day life, like you. Start
Yeah,
going
like
into
even
a
like
bit?
if someone's on the phone with someone else and they get off saying, "Who is that? Your lawyer?" I still do that.
That's a
Or
classic joke.
when it's usable in. You still got me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I thought I lost you for a
No, you're
second.
fine.
I mean, it's usable in so many different situations, but the moment where he has to walk back into his dorm room and sees his roommate and girlfriend going at it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what
and
they're
he,
doing.
and he just goes, "That's new."
Yeah.
I say that's new all the time, and it's totally The Sure Thing's fault.
Well, when I was doing my research for this episode, I was on YouTube and I just typed in The Sure Thing. There were so many clips, like individually edited out clips from the movie that had a bunch of views on them, like so many gags, like the stuff in the car, like that I was a little surprised. Like I was given a little bit of awareness of how much of a following this movie actually had. Once you could see how much space on YouTube is dedicated to individual scenes. And you're right, there isn't necessarily, it's not Caddyshack or anything quotable like that, but there seems to be a real love or reverence for these kind of individual moments. That's the best thing about road movies, too, is that when you're constantly changing locations, you can have a new crazy character. Like when they first get when they're hitchhiking, and he's like, "I wouldn't get in that truck." Like that thing's got like 100,000 views on YouTube right now.
Where he goes crazy in the truck?
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, people
And you can see that both the truck driver and Daphne Zuniga are desperately trying not to laugh.
Oh yeah, Daphne Zuniga more than any, like I can't believe that was the best take they got out of her.
I love it though, because I think her face is very natural. She's so happy that she's
Sure.
been saved and so amused with what he's doing
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
same time.
You guys, that's
that
the moment
it
she
felt
falls
all
in
right
love.
to me.
That's a
That's
good
the moment
point.
she falls in love with him, you guys.
It's like in the Woody Allen movie Play It Again, Sam, where Diane Keaton laughs like the biggest, loudest laugh, and it's legitimate. Like it's the realest laugh you'll ever see. So it's like, You guys are right. Yeah, the more
So it's. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say it's 2015, and this movie came out 30 years ago, and things that I can recall saying relatively recently, probably to my wife, include, "Sorry, I'm late. There was this big problem, and I am late because of it."
That's great. I love that.
And I have sort of a mischievous streak that comes out at unexpected times. And there's more than one occasion where she has told me that I can't do something, and I will say, "Yes, I can. This is America. You can go anywhere." And
that was
and
that was the moment where I was like, "Oh, I was exactly like Gib." When I was like, I actually still am in a lot of ways.
And I remember just torturing my sister in the same way that Gib tortures Allison, just going, "Repressed, repressed." Because she was a much more serious student than I was growing up.
Do people get these references when you're doing?
I don't. But that's the thing. They're not. It's not like making a reference to a movie. These aren't things that I say with like a wink and a nod. They're just things that are ingrained into my language in a way where that is how I react to certain situations because of the sure thing.
I love that, and I mean I don't mean to, as always, talk about the best show, but I think it is similar in that, there are things you say after listening to that show long enough that it's just like,
it works its way.
That's just how I talk now.
Yeah.
It's nothing, that's where it came from, but that's just what I say now.
Yeah, when I got the
Whenever something is worrisome,
I cannot say the word fantasy. I will only say the word. I participate in a fantasy football league. Stuff like that, where it's difficult to shake, because I know, for example, anytime I open a can of seltzer, I might say a word when I open a can of seltzer that drives my wife insane.
Shaku. Yeah, I do the same. I bully my girlfriend into agreeing with me when I just declare things. I'm like, right? Right? Like, just force her. Like,
right?
Right? And she's like, yeah, okay. And it's like, fine. Well, I've realized the same thing once I got the Simpsons World app, and I've just watched all the Simpsons all over again. And a while back, my lady friend was like, because if I'm getting like a little impatient, but like I'm not freaking out, but getting close to it, I start yelling Schnell at people, like, "Come on, let's go!" And I was like, "Did that come from?" And she's like, "Where'd that come from?" I was like, "I don't know, maybe The Simpsons." And then we were watching Seinfeld on Hulu the other week, and right as they were all running out the door, Kramer starts yelling Schnell at him, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I probably hadn't seen that since I was like 8 or 9 years old or something. And then for the past 20 years, I've just been saying that, not even knowing where it's coming from. So like in a lot of ways, when you have like, if you're a crazy pop culture person, obsessive like we are, and you kind of co-opt these things from movies or shows that you love that not everybody else knows about, then it sort of informs your personality more than it is a reference to a thing that everybody gets. It's like Caddyshack is inclusive for almost everybody. But when you're walking around saying stuff from the sure thing, that's really more like it's more of a persona. Like you're personifying a thing more than you're just like winkingly referencing it.
Yeah, exactly. I remember my friend Emma is probably, she's probably like 15 or 16 years younger than I. And at some point, one of our big bonding moments when she was like, barely 20 was the fact that somehow it came up that we both loved the sure thing, and then spent an unexpected amount of time just kind of realizing that we both sort of knew the movie by heart in our own ways. But that's the only time it's not something that comes up in conversation. It's just sort of one of these things that I'm realizing more and more as I set into this exercise just influenced me directly and indirectly in ways both good and bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think another thing that I liked a lot about it is, since my mom and I saw it together and we both saw it pretty much cold, my mom's a super easy laugh who will laugh out loud at almost anything that's funny. And it's one of the first movies that I can remember seeing with her that we both really enjoyed together on kind of like the same level. And so then it did become like a
a Solomon family staple. I know when video stores still existed, and to buy a new VHS tape of a movie was like a $79, $89, $99 proposition. Somehow there was a store used copy of The Sure Thing.
Wait. Whoa, I'm sorry, John. $79 for a VHS tape?
No, for the VCR.
Like in the 80s, when movies would just be available in video stores, if you actually wanted to buy one of those tapes,
are you talking
they were like
Betamax era, like super early?
No, like end of Betamax. So this probably came out on VHS in like 86 or 87.
Uh-huh.
And like you couldn't really, there wasn't like a Best Buy or a Target you could go to buy like movies that just came out on VHS.
Yeah. Well,
and so you'd have to rent them.
Well, my family, most of our tapes were like pre-owned, used from the Video Kingdom. Like,
that's the thing is we just had to, it was like, I think my sister and I were like, we would like The Sure Thing on VHS for Hanukkah. And it just was like, well, that would be $90. And it was like, well, I guess we're not getting that. And then, a copy that wasn't in a sleeve was finally available at our local video store.
Yeah.
I know I sent Taylor a picture of it. I went and retrieved it from my parents'
still
house
have it?
a couple weeks ago. Oh yeah, it's on my mantle now to remind me that we need to tape this.
Oh man, that's so great.
That's really cool. I mean, I guess I didn't realize that at some point. I guess you'd be buying the store copy, basically, right? Is how it would.
Yeah, like maybe they'd get like 5 or 6 copies because something would be new, and then 6 months later,
you only need one.
They had a finite amount of space, and especially when it was those big, like puffy box VHS tapes, like you had to
Disney
put out
ones.
more copies of E.T. or what have you.
Yeah, well, okay. So I think here's what I'm taking away from both of you guys talking about, just sort of referencing things, but not actually referencing, just speaking absorbing things in this way when you're 10, 11, 12 years old.
You're like, this is me now. I'm going to be like Cusack.
Yeah, John, I think you're just very lucky that it was The Sure Thing that was the thing that got you, because it's like a really good message in the movie, It's about like what's important, which it's the fight, it's the battle of the ego and the id,
That last scene at the end of the movie where he hands in his final for English class or whatever, and then she reads it, is a fucking amazing romantic comedy closing to a movie. The way that the story is, like the way that it's told is so well done, but also believable enough that a pretty insightful, like 19, 20-year-old could have written that thing. Like it has a certain brevity to it that it doesn't feel like it was so like up its own ass in like a screenwriter sort of way.
Yeah. Well,
maybe that's a good point for me to read. I have Roger Ebert's original Sure Thing review open in a window here. Can I read the last 3 paragraphs?
Get after it, man. You're the most prepared guest we've ever had.
One of the unique things about the movie is that the teenagers show a normal shyness about sex. Most movie teenagers seem to be valedictorians from the Masters and Johnson Institute. They're born knowing more about sex than Rhett Butler would have to be able to teach Scarlett O'Hara.
Are you sure Roger Ebert wrote this? I couldn't tell that anybody else would have wrote this review.
Yeah, there's more. There's more.
Right.
They are also, of course, not shy, not insecure, not modest, and occasionally not human. Walter and Allison are closer to real teenagers with real doubts and hesitations and uncertainties. The other surprising thing about the film is that it successfully avoids an obligatory sex scene with The Sure Thing, Nicolette Sheridan in a thankless role. This film is so revolutionary, it believes sex should be accompanied by respect and love! ! By the end of the movie, when Walter and Allison finally do kiss, it means something. It means more, in fact, than any movie kiss in a long time, because it takes place between 2 people we've gotten to know and who have gotten to know each other. 3.5 stars.
Oh, man.
Classic Roger Ebert review. I hated it initially, then I loved it at the end.
Yeah, and then the other review that I have, which I guess, and I think Taylor made a good point about the way we absorb movies instead of overtly referencing them sometimes. And as an aside, I've been all in on this podcast that I've been listening to for the lion's share of the year called Star Wars Minute, where people, these two guys analyze each minute from the original trilogy. Like each episode is just 1 60-second chunk.
Jesus.
And early on, it's great. It's totally great. But early on, one of them was saying that he used to work at a a science fiction store. And if you were making a Simpsons reference, you had to hold up your right hand. And if you were making a Star Wars reference, you had to hold up your left hand.
Speed the process.
And those are, yeah, exactly. And those are those are much more overt references.
Oh, of course.
As compared to movies like this that just kind of your DNA absorbs in certain fashion. I'm looking to see if there's anything. I also have the New York Times review that Janet Maslin wrote. I'll read I'm going to read the first paragraph of that, and then
let's not do that. Let's get back to it.
Okay.
No, let's
keep it going.
Let's focus on us. I don't give a shit about other people. Because my question to you, John, is like I would imagine that the personal connection you have to the movie would be so much more heightened because of that, right? Like. Do you have? I mean, you're talking about it on this podcast today, but I would imagine that you have a more intimate relationship with this movie than you would anything else that could be shared with other people, right?
Yeah, I guess so, because it's not like, the sure thing doesn't come up in conversation on a regular basis, and when it does, I'm excited that it does. But a lot of the stuff that we're talking about tonight are things that I hadn't really thought about in a good while, but I was excited for them to come to the forefront of my mind again.
Well, they're inherent. They're just like exactly it. It's the things you don't think about that are just like inherent to your personality and your character and who you are.
And also, I mean, I try and worm my interest into every conversation I have, but if it's something like like when you had your friend that also knew the sure thing, it's like you have this backlog of things that you've been thinking about for so long that you don't get to talk about with a lot of other people because it's not as widely referenced or whatever. So I think a lot of times the bonds that you create over that pop culture that might seem more personal to you or niche or whatever, then it's not like we're all just saying, Luke, I'm your father. Like, yeah, okay, I'll see you later. Thanks for pumping my gas. It's like, no, you understand me and I understand you because we're the only ones that are putting so much of ourselves into this thing.
Yeah, and I also think, just thinking about seeing it when I was 11, possibly 12, it was the right movie at the right time for me. Like if I'd been a couple years older or a couple years younger, I would love to know in some parallel timeline what my sure thing would have been. But
no such thing as a sure thing, John. That's the whole point.
I love that. I love that the sure thing is the title, so you think that's what it's all about. But it's a red herring, The title is just like, yes, it's the motivating factor, but
I think the movie came along at a time when I was probably as malleable and ready to absorb things as I would ever be in my life.
Yeah.
And so I think that is another one of the reasons why it has stayed with me in some way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has the movie changed at all for you? Like now that you're older and you're watching it, is there? Have you feel like that your perspective's changed or that you've grown with it?
A little bit in the sense that I think, as I said, I understood what Gibbs saw in Allison more now than I did probably when I was in my 20s, and it definitely stood out as a much sweeter film, like we talked about, than I probably realized. Because I would imagine that I saw this before I saw all the movies that it gets lumped in with, that are all the kind of like teen sex comedies that we were talking about earlier, the Porkies and what have you. But it does have, I was surprised that I agreed with Rob Reiner talking about the timelessness of it, where, sure, you'd have to update a couple things where they, not having a cell phone and forgetting that you have a credit card are huge issues in the movie that would not be issues now. But otherwise, it is kind of this quintessential road movie. And I guess also, you used the term romantic comedy earlier, and I guess that works. But at the same time, like, I don't know, it's not as treacly as most of those movies are.
Well, they won't they?
It's about two people of substance.
Yeah.
Like, even though John Cusack is goofy, he's still he's a very decent guy.
There's a lot of depth in those eyes, Cusack.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to fit this in, so I'll just put it here now. But, a lot of people I know, this is going to sound crazy, share information about themselves on the internet that I don't necessarily request. It's just there. And at least one person I know was putting messages that they were receiving from potential suitors from some e-dating site up.
Oh,
Like-
yeah, sure.
And I saw one of them, like they were aghast. They were like, "Can you believe somebody sent me this?" And it was, the opening salvo was just, "How would you like to have a sexual encounter so intense it could conceivably change your political views?" And I thought, no, you don't get it. That's from The Sure Thing. This is not a creep. This might be an avenue worth pursuing.
yeah,
but
yeah.
That's
I didn't tell him.
That is so smart if you're going to put that in your dating profile or your Tinder or whatever, because that's how you separate the people that will understand you and those that won't.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, as soon as you said that, I was like, that was probably my favorite line when I rewatched it last night. Where I was like, fuck yeah.
And I mean,
hilarious.
it's also funny. Like,
It's
even
hilarious.
if you don't know what the reference is, it's a funny thing to think about.
It's so great.
I'm going to change your political
Yeah.
views on
Yeah.
sex.
There's
I
yeah,
mean-
there- talk about depth.
Yeah.
It's not just in Cusack's eyes. Like, what does that even mean? Like, all right,
Maybe I do want that.
let her rip. You know, I have been questioning my political orientation recently.
Now I'm a libertarian.
Yeah.
Oh, be careful with a libertarian in the sack, though. Anything goes.
Oh man, well, thank you so much, John. This has been great. I'm so glad that this made me watch the movie. Basically,
Yeah, no, thank
As-
you guys
as
a great deal for asking me to be on, and I'm certainly gonna make sure that I add you all to my podcast feed as soon as we get off the air, because there are a bunch
We
of
recommend
bunch
that
of old
to
topics
everybody.
that I saw listed that I want to check out what people have to say about them.
John, you are arguing for the reason we want people to listen.
Yeah,
'Cause-
John, I would say after doing this episode that not only have you been a good guest, but you are actually our target audience. You were
Well, let me
you're
ask
exactly what we're going for.
Let me ask you a question that maybe is best answered off air. So let's say I enjoyed this episode. Let's say I'm
Sure.
someone who listened to this episode and I want to. What's the next episode of the show that I
Probably
should go
High
to?
Fidelity, right, Taylor?
Well, I mean, yeah. Our was it our 50th episode? Our
believe
50th
so.
episode,
Something
we
like
talked
that.
exclusively about the movie High Fidelity because that's kind of the movie that we base this
That's
whole
the
damn
crux
thing
of
on.
the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. The John Cusack / High Fidelity / McCartney 2 is kind of what we base.
Yeah, pretty much.
This whole thing on
Yeah.
is, if we like these three things, and we could talk for hours about these three things, and they represent a certain philosophy, then yeah, maybe we should do the
Yeah,
show.
this has been a great companion piece, actually, to the Like,
Sure.
I mean, that's what I was saying at the top of the show. I would love to do an episode about every single
Every
John
single-
Cusack movie.
Well, and then we also did a live episode at Lost Lake, which is a bar. Here
yeah,
in
that's
town,
right. If
Where
we-
we attempted to get other people to talk about John Cusack.
and they just want to talk about Joan Cusack. The
Well,
whole
and it
time.
also just kind of derailed because so much alcohol was involved,
Yeah.
and I mean, we tried. It was a good idea.
So, I mean, Cusack's all over this thing. Just,
Yeah.
Jump around. Pick out an episode from each era of the show. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 now that we're into.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Jon Solomon, surely you would enjoy our Tom Sharpling episode.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
think-
fun one.
That's the one I've heard.
Well, great. John, we do shameless plugs on this show. You mentioned it during the episode, but you got a pretty big thing coming up in the next couple
Sure.
months,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I'll give you all the requisite URLs. There's a site for my radio show at keepingscoreathome.com. I run a small independent record label that's at comedy-1.com.
And that's of course an Albert Brooks reference, right?
Yes, I'm delighted that you would say that without my having to say that.
Well, sir,
that makes
this
me
is-
very, very happy.
John, you'll be delighted to know that Taylor has that on vinyl.
I do.
Oh, so
and
do
got
I.
it.
Do you have the
I got it
second
for
one?
$5.
Have you ever heard the second Albert Brooks record?
I haven't. I've been able to find it. I've never been able to find. I mean, I'm
It's-
sure it's on eBay for $80 or something. But
Yeah, it's great. I think it might be even better than Comedy -1. And one of
Oh,
my
sure.
favorite things about it is it comes in very elaborate packaging, where the LP jacket is sort of die cut in the back, so it can also serve as a picture frame. And then there's a 8x10 of Albert Brooks attached to the front of the record, and every copy of it has the same thing written on the 8x10. It says, "To single any one of you out would be a great mistake."
I have to say, as you're saying that, I'm realizing, John, you sound like Albert Brooks.
I just was thinking the same thing.
You really do.
You know, I mean, I know we're running on here, but I was in Detroit like 6 or 7 years ago for work, and I met up with a friend who I hadn't seen in a few years, went out to dinner with her and a couple of her friends, and all of a sudden in the middle of the dinner, the guy that I didn't know who was there was like, you sound like someone. Who do you sound like? And then he said Albert Brooks, and I was super flattered, but at the same time thought that my friend Amy had put him up to it, but he hadn't. So I'll take it. Thank you.
Man, right when you were telling that story, it sounded like Albert Brooks was in that restaurant. Like, if you can't hear it, re-listen to this episode, man. It's right there.
Yeah, you got a career as an Albert Brooks audio impersonator if you feel like it.
Yeah, if he dies, read his autobiography.
God forbid.
Well, I'm blown away by all of that. We got to also plug our sponsors, Sexpot Comedy.
Thank you, Sexpot.
And Denver Relief, Sexy Pizza. Mm-hmm. And also, I got to plug, I got a show coming up this Thursday. I'm not doing stand-up comedy, but my lady friend Mara Wiles is doing a new show at Image Brew the first Thursday of every month. It's a production house over on the north side of town, on like 38th and La Pam. And it's going to be this Thursday. I believe it's at 8 or 9. And I'm not doing stand-up, but I am the art director of this show. So I'll be setting up some projections and things like that. And then every month thereafter, me and my good buddy Jordan Dahl are going to be releasing live video video sketches, but they'll be live in person. They'll be on the web the next day. But if you want to see them in person and laugh with some people, go check out The Funny Side the first Thursday of every month, hosted by Mara Wiles, who's far funnier than I am.
That's a great
I got sidetracked because of Albert Brooks, but just one thing that I wanted to add, since you were talking about Christmas, is the 27th annual edition of my Christmas show will start this Christmas Eve at 5 p.m. and run until Christmas Day at 6 p.m. And if you guys wanted to record something Christmassy for it to debut during the show, you would certainly be more than welcome to.
Oh, cool.
Oh, man. Well, is that Pacific time, 5 p.m.?
Oh, that's Eastern time. I'm sorry.
Or Eastern time.
So 3 o'clock our time.
Yeah.
3 to 4.
Okay.
25 hours.
Well, Kev's got a new band, so maybe they can do a Christmas song.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah,
please. I would welcome that.
Yeah, and also check out Big City Drugs. We don't have anything online yet, but we're probably going to start recording.
Just as a concept, I should check out Big City Drugs.
Well, that's the name of my Rocky Mountain punk band. But yeah, also, I mean, if you're looking to get out of the sticks, see what's going on in the big city, and ingest yourself and digest yourself. That's what we say.
I can already see the screaming tagline as you're on stage, like, ingest yourself. Yeah.
See, you get it already.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
The name is it's
self-explanatory.
evocative as the sound, of course. And also check out WPRB as well, everybody.
Yeah,
I'm plugging John's station for him.
Was that a jazz thing? Was that live on the air that was behind you there?
No, I think just there's a performance space like where I'll record bands sometimes, and I think they were just using it as their practice space tonight.